Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is truly a landmark in the landscape of turn-based RPGs. What impresses me most is how the game combines traditional turn-based strategy with real-time timing elements, especially the parry system that resembles games like Sekiro. This gives a special depth to the combat, making it dynamic and challenging, and not just a predictable exchange of attacks and defenses. This mix made me feel that each fight requires total attention and adaptation, something rare in RPGs of the genre nowadays. So, while the combat system is brilliant and rewarding for those who enjoy understanding the mechanics, unfortunately, it doesn't deliver the same fluidity for those accustomed to quick and less demanding content of current times, especially for Generation Alpha, which is already growing immersed in social media and games with a frantic pace. The game's pace is slower, the learning curve is high, and in the early moments, there is a real difficulty in adapting to the need for perfect timing and strategic use of resources like action points. This may seem like a cold shower for some, but for those who like a deep challenge, it's an incredible experience. The narrative aspect of Clair Obscur brings an emotional and complex layer that goes far beyond combat. The story has a dark and reflective tone, exploring themes of loss, memory, and renewal, with characters that captivate with their emotional weight and deep motivations. It's like following an almost literary journey that unfolds slowly, involving you in a world that mixes the real with the symbolic. Therefore, the game's slower pace makes sense within this narrative context, as it invites you to absorb every detail and reflect on what is happening, something that I believe many modern games end up leaving aside. Still, I have to admit that for players accustomed to something more immediate and plug and play, especially in today's young audience, this game will require patience and dedication. Those who jump between short videos and quick games will probably feel the weight of the game's complexity, but this is not a criticism, but a warning. It's an RPG that rewards those who dive in head first, learn its nuances, and value the gradual growth of the characters and the plot. The feeling of winning a difficult combat in Clair Obscur is much more rewarding because of this detailed construction. Speaking of personal aspects, I found myself reflecting on how the game experience took me out of the accelerated rhythm to which I had become accustomed. It was almost therapeutic to slow down to understand the synergy of the characters and the importance of timing in combat. Of course, there were moments of frustration, especially in the beginning, but this only helped to value the victories and discoveries during the progress. The game has its own identity and doesn't try to be faster or simpler just to please everyone, which for me is a great point of respect for the artistic proposal. In the end, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is practically a gem for those seeking depth and a strong strategic and narrative challenge. Its immersive narrative and combat that requires reflexes and planning are an important counterpoint to the trend of more immediate games today. It's an invitation to slow down and get lost in this complex and emotional expedition, knowing that this slow pace may be a challenge for Generation Alpha players, but it is exactly this pace that makes the game so memorable and meaningful for those who have patience and willingness to explore its deep universe. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 stands out a lot for its rich and detailed setting, which transports you to a world inspired by the Belle Epoque, full of shadows, lights, and an almost poetic atmosphere. For me, the feeling of living this universe doesn't come only from the images or soundtrack, but from the way each location, from the forests to the underwater depths, involves you in a story that makes you feel the weight of the expedition's mission. It's an invitation to slow down and contemplate, something rare in modern games where everything is accelerated. This detailed immersion is one of the things that most enchanted me in the game, even if it requires patience to really capture every nuance. This patience, by the way, is a constant requirement in the tactical management of the game. In Clair Obscur, it's not enough to just attack. You need to plan each movement carefully, paying attention to the synergies between the characters and the abilities they possess. The system of managing action points and abilities has a complexity that made me respect the game's design. It's fascinating to see how certain combinations can trigger devastating effects, but this only happens if you can assemble this chain carefully and with timing. This is a strong point for players who love strategy and like to test different builds, but it can be an obstacle for those who prefer something more instant. It is exactly this complexity of synergies that made me think about how the game contrasts with the culture of speed and content consumption of Generation Alpha. Nowadays, we have an almost natural tendency to seek everything quickly, with immediate rewards and few demands for prolonged attention. Clair Obscur requires you to slow down, study the characters, understand the abilities and specific cases to get the most out of the system. It's almost a meditative experience of strategy, where you get involved to the point of feeling proud when you put together a perfect combination. A moment that simply doesn't exist in games that focus on fast and repetitive action. Personally, I see this demand for patience as a breath of fresh air amidst so many games designed for quick consumption, even because of my affinity with the RPG style. I think this type of title shows that there is still room for games that do not seek immediate gratification. For me, this greater challenge only adds value, even if it means a barrier for those who are accustomed to more agile styles. Clair Obscur rewards dedication with a rich tactical experience which evolves with you as you learn to deal with its nuances and peculiarities. The immersion in the detailed setting is another point that requires the same time and calm to be fully absorbed. Each scenario, each dialogue, and each detail of the art contribute to building a world that seems alive and melancholic at the same time. This feeling of being in a place where time has another rhythm helps to reinforce the importance of patience, not only in the gameplay, but in the way the player is invited to interact with the story and the universe of the game. I myself have stopped more than once just to admire the art or reflect on the narrative while walking through the environments. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a game that stands out precisely because it requires a different posture from the player, a break from the culture of immediacy, especially from the younger generations accustomed to instant content. For those who are willing, it offers a rewarding tactical and aesthetic journey, but with the awareness that haste is not an ally here. In my experience, this makes the game memorable, precisely because of the depth it requires and the way it contradicts the current trend of fast and disposable games. Games like Clair Obscur Expedition 33 make me think a lot about the importance of slower and more contemplative experiences in an increasingly accelerated world. Today, most digital entertainment is made to capture attention immediately and not let go until something new and fast appears. In this context, games that ask for a pause for reflection, strategy, and careful immersion seem almost like a resistance or an invitation to slow down. I see this type of game not only as art, but as a necessity for those who want something deeper than just passing the time. What most catches my attention in Clair Obscur is this feeling of contemplation, almost meditative, that it offers. Each combat, each dialogue works at the rhythm of the game and not at the rhythm of the player. This can sometimes frustrate at first, because today's culture conditions us to instant satisfaction and rushing. But after a while, you start to appreciate that precisely this slowness is what creates a much stronger connection with the world and the story. For me, it's a breath of fresh air that many modern games don't offer, as they seem to chase after trends and virality. Even with so many games focused on frantic action, there is a growing audience that seeks precisely these moments to breathe and reflect. The slow experience of Clair Obscur delivers a different sense of value. You feel that you are building something, learning and growing within the game, instead of just going through phases. This has an emotional impact that cannot be replicated with fast and superficial games, as it is a more intimate relationship with the content. I myself have felt how many times this type of game has made me slow down in life to pay attention to what really matters. The contrast is even greater for Generation Alpha, accustomed to a constant flow of instant stimuli, something that fast games and social media content reinforce. Even so, I believe that there is hope for denser experiences, because games like Clair Obscur prove that there is room for those who want to escape this rhythm and invest time in something more. For me, it's comforting to see that the market still allows the creation and appreciation of this type of game, even with the pressure for accelerated entertainment. Throughout my experience, I realized that these more paused journeys have a therapeutic value. They work almost like a break in the routine, allowing the player not to be just a passive consumer, but to actively participate in that universe, absorbing details and discovering deep layers. This makes each victory and each advance felt more intensely, because the game's own rhythm defines a relationship of respect with the player's time. I consider this a huge differential that can and should coexist with more direct games. I believe that slow and contemplative experiences will continue to have their place because there is something in human nature that needs this to balance the pressure of modern life. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is an excellent example of this, showing that games that respect the player's rhythm and offer an invitation to reflection are still essential. For me, this type of experience is like a form of art, in which the player participates and grows, something that merely accelerated games hardly manage to provide. It's proof that time, when well used, enriches the journey much more than haste. Expedition 33 impresses me deeply with its cinematographic direction, which elevates the game to a form of interactive art of the highest level. The way the developers combine narrative, visual, and sound creates scenes that seem to have come directly from a film, with careful framing, dramatic lighting, and cuts that catch the eye. For me, playing is not just participating in battles, it is also watching a carefully directed visual piece, where each moment carries weight and meaning, something rare in traditional games. This cinematographic direction is united with an emotional depth that makes the experience even more touching. The story is not just a sequence of events, but a journey that explores themes of loss, love, death, and memory, with characters presented with humanity and complexity. I confess that in several moments of the game I stopped to reflect on what was happening, felt empathy for the characters, and even needed to take a break to process the emotions. This ability of the game to stir the player at such deep levels is something that marked me deeply. The game incorporates visual elements that strongly refer to French Expressionism and Art Nouveau, which creates a unique setting of melancholic and surreal beauty. This aesthetic reinforces the tone of the narrative and helps to build an atmosphere that is not just scenery, but an active part of the story. For me, this fusion between art and narrative transforms each explored area into a living screen, where art counts as much as text or combat, making the experience sensory and impactful. The interactive treatment of the story, which you live and influence while playing, makes Clair Obscur something more than a beautiful film to watch. You feel part of that emotional plot, caught between strategic actions and decisions that weigh, nurturing an identification with the characters and the world around them. I found this relationship a transformative differential because it is an art made so that the player not only observes but feels in the skin the consequences and the drama of the story in real time. Personally, this combination of cinematographic direction and emotional depth left me with a feeling of participating in a work much larger than a simple game. It's as if I were watching and living at the same time, which broadened my view of what video games can be. I have played many titles, but few have provoked this rich mix of feelings and aesthetics. This made me admire even more the potential of the medium to tell complex and exciting stories. Expedition 33 is proof that video games can be high-level art, combining cinema and interactivity to create deep and unforgettable experiences. This work shows that cinematographic direction and emotion can go hand in hand, providing moments that go far beyond entertainment, reaching the field of sensory and emotional art. For me, this game is a clear example of how the industry can evolve to deliver impactful and visually stunning narratives. The experience of playing Expedition 33 made me reflect a lot on the cultural shock that exists between works made for slow appreciation and the accelerated mode of content consumption that Generation Alpha is accustomed to on social media. We live in an era where everything is made to be consumed quickly, in a few seconds or minutes, and where the patience to absorb more elaborate narratives or gameplay is getting smaller. This makes games like Clair Obscur not only difficult to access for this audience, but almost an exercise in cultural resistance. Personally, I see this shock as a collision between two distinct rhythms of life and entertainment. Clair Obscur requires you to slow down, pay attention to details, and get emotionally involved, something almost opposite to what Generation Alpha does daily. Scroll feeds, watch short videos, and seek the next novelty without pause. For me, this has become something emblematic, because despite the modern fascination with the instant, I still find enormous value in works that ask for deep time and reflection, and the game exactly reminded me of that. This does not mean that Generation Alpha does not have the capacity to understand or be enchanted by more complex games, but that its attention system is, for the most part, trained for speed. I find it interesting how Clair Obscur challenges this trend, trying to pull the player into a more meditative experience, almost as a counterpoint to the culture of fast consumption. This, for me, is an act of courage and also an important invitation so that we can value different rhythms of cultural appreciation. In many moments playing, I realized how much the games designed for a slow experience are true refuges against the saturation of information and immediate stimuli that dominate our lives, especially for those who are younger. And here, the art of the game, its narrative, and the calm necessary for combat create an almost therapeutic space where anxiety and immediacy have no place. For me, these games function as reminders that time can be our ally for a richer and more meaningful experience. I also feel a certain sadness when I realize this shock, as it seems that the market is increasingly closed to deeper experiences just because of this accelerated habit. Clair Obscur is almost a cry, so that the industry does not forget the importance of these games that challenge the player to invest time and emotion. I believe that experiences like this are essential to diversify what the video game can offer beyond fast and disposable entertainment. In the end, I see that this cultural shock is a challenge and a call for players, developers, and the industry to find ways to balance these extremes. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, with its slow, tactical, and emotional proposal, is a gem that reminds us that the video game can also be a space for contemplation and art, even in an accelerated world. For me, this duality is one of the most interesting and necessary debates in the current scenario of digital entertainment.
A storm is coming. Ready to evade. Danger!